that's necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and good women to do nothing. To stand on the sidelines as history unfolds before our eyes. And as we sit here tonight, and we can talk about some of the lighter things in life, Jimmy John's, Domino's, half a world away, they don't have this luxury. In Syria, as we're sitting here tonight, a conflict is raging between the rebel forces and between the government. A conflict about the fundamental rights of individuals to life, to liberty, to property. And over the course of my time with you here today, I want to first talk about the specific problems that are happening there. And after doing so, I want to talk about what those problems can be attributed to. Because we can't make assumptions about what these problems are. After doing so, I'll propose a plan. And I believe that after we talk about this plan, you'll believe that action is a better option than inaction, that sitting on the sidelines simply isn't good enough for our country. And so turning to the first point, what those specific problems are. Well, to give you some specific examples before we go into the big picture. On September 20th, as citizens in Syria were going to the gas station. Regular civilians, not rebels. Syrian warplanes flew overhead and dropped several tons of bombs on the site. 55 individuals were killed. Just last week, according to a CNN report, a hospital was leveled by government warplanes. Now, this wasn't a rebel hospital. This wasn't a hospital where a lot of military fighters were holed up. No, this was a civilian hospital. And they heard some rumors that there might be some rebel forces there. 15 people died. A hospital was destroyed. But even more than that, there was an example in August. And just one example of many times this has happened, where the human rights groups there, they found a mass grave. They didn't just find this anywhere. They didn't find it in some far-off province, far away from where anything was happening. No, they found this 15 miles outside of the capital city. Now, for all of us in here today, imagine there's a mass grave 15 miles outside of Washington, D.C. That's the situation we're facing there today. And on a more personal level, the actions that are being undertaken there, they are affecting ordinary, everyday citizens. Citizens like us, who might have gone to college and might have said one of the wrong things. Now, Human Rights Watch, a well-respected international organization, in July, this is 6 months ago, but they had compiled a list of acts of torture that had occurred since the conflict began, in the course of about 9 months. More's happened since then. But this is just those 9 months. And I'd encourage you to look at that report online. And some of the things in there are very graphic. But I want to highlight two of the lesser examples in there. Two of the things in there that aren't as distasteful as the other things. And I think this will be pretty stark. In one example, a 13-year-old boy, someone that could be like my younger brother or younger sister, was electrocuted with car cables. He had his fingernails ripped out. In another case, an individual, not a rebel fighter, just a civilian, was beaten repeatedly by government forces. And they looked at him and they said, "You want freedom? You want democracy? Well, here's your freedom. Here's your democracy." And so despite these small-scale examples, when you take this out in the big picture, when you look at what all is happening over there, last week, the death toll surpassed 37,000. 415,000 individuals have been displaced from their homes, have had to flee to other countries, according to the United Nations. 1.5 million individuals are in desperate need of food aid. And so it's clear, then, that there is a problem, that something bad is happening. But the next question is who's to blame for this problem? Because it's not enough to sit there and say, well, because there is this big bad government, it must be their fault. Because there is also a rebel group there. And so we can't rush to judgments. But after looking at the facts, I think the situation is clear. Those 200 acts of torture I talked about, It was all happening in government facilities. In many cases, government military officials were the ones who were directly responsible for the acts. They had uniforms on. They were acting under government directives. This is real, and this is tangible. Those warplanes that bombed the hospital I was talking about earlier, that took out the gas station, those were government warplanes. And of the 37,000 individuals who have been killed in this conflict, only 3,000 members were individuals who were either loyal to the government or were government fighters. The other 34,000, they were rebels, but even more than that, they were innocent civilians. Bashar al-Assad, the dictator of Syria, when an Iranian delegation came to visit, he said, "I will crush this uprising no matter the cost. No matter what the consequences are, I will put it down." Well, for all of us in here today, I think we can agree that's not okay. That there are fundamental rights that each and every one of us possesses, which can't be taken away. And so the question then becomes, how can we fix this? What options are really out there? Because it's nice to stop violence, it's nice to make sure human rights aren't violated, but in a practical sense, what can we really do? Well, what I would propose is something called an enhanced no-fly zone. This has two prongs. Now, the first of these prongs is taking control of the skies. So the U.S., along with our strategic partners, would not let any Syrian warplanes fly. No Syrian helicopters. A bombing of hospitals, gas stations wouldn't be allowed to occur. But in addition to that, the enhanced portion of the no-fly zone, what we would do with that is our planes that are in the sky, they would actively monitor the ground. And if, for example, a Syrian government tank is going into a refugee camp, they'll prevent that from happening. And so there'd be no boots on the ground, but we could deal with the problem. And so now, the question really is, will this work? Is it too good to be true? A solution where we don't have to invest a significant number of American lives, but where we can make a tangible, real difference. And after studying the situation, I've got to say, I don't think it is. In Libya, we did something similar to this, along with the American Air Force and our other strategic partners. We were able to take down a regime and make sure that those who are being harmed, those who are having their liberty and their fundamental rights taken away, that wouldn't continue. Another thing to note is that right now the time is ripe for action. While initially the Syrian rebels were a fragmented group, they had their base in Turkey. Now, since that time, they've now recently moved into Syria, and they've elected one leader to preside over everything. And so you have that central command structure. We can make a real difference. The time for action is now. The United States Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, he gave an interview to the Jerusalem Post last month. And while he said we don't have any plans right now to enforce one of these enhanced no-fly zones, we do have the capability. We can take this action. We can resolve the problem without putting boots on the ground. We can make a difference. And as individuals, sitting here privileged today, people who, in the scheme of the world, are pretty well off. Our concerns, while they're important, pale in comparison to these. We have a simple choice. Would taking action, would implementing a plan be better than the status quo? And so if you believe action is preferable to inaction, you should support my plan. If you believe that as the president of Egypt said, that this problem won't be fixed until an outside party comes in and stops it, you should support action. If you support good public policy, you should support this action. And so what we have here today, again, is a simple choice. It's a choice dictated by the facts of the situation. It's a choice demanded by justice. And this summer, I was walking through a museum in Washington, D.C., and I came across a quote that I think is particularly relevant here today. And it was by Dwight Eisenhower, his first inaugural address. And he said that history does not long entrust the care of freedom to the weak or to the timid. We must not be weak in our defense of democracy. We must not be timid. Thank you very much.